Hey, this is Leach with Simpson Math, and probably I am your business stats professor. If you're watching this video, if not, well, hey, welcome to our YouTube channel. For my students, I'm going to be going through um, one of the Excel projects. This is probably the first one that you're doing. It's going to be in chapter 2 of our business stats book. It's kind of when you should do it. You can do it at any point. You don't have to wait until it shows up in MyLab. I would even do it probably right now when you're watching this video because I have this should have this plugged into our chapter 2 homework. So hello, while you're working on chapter 2, don't fall behind, do all the things. Let me know if you need any help. But I'm showing you to try to help. I'm showing you doing this to make sure that you're good to go with these Excel projects. So I'm going to show you kind of the ins and outs, how to not get stressed over them too much. I'm going to show you how you can know exactly what MyLab is wanting whenever it auto grades it for you. And then in case you feel a little rusty on some Excel things, I will be going through the entire project, just kind of showing it off, showing you how I would do it, giving you some extra information about some of these functions. I probably won't have this. I will not have one of these for all the projects. But the first few, just to kind of get your feet wet and get you going. Just a note, I'm wearing my mistakes allow thinking to happen shirt. Remember, that's the acronym for math, MATH. You will make mistakes when you're doing these things. Sometimes it's mistakes that we grow from, that we learn from, that we get better from. Sometimes it will be mistakes that, oops, you just kind of fat finger the wrong function or something like that. You might have even made a mistake by doing it a different way than MyLab was wanting it, and it counted it wrong. Yours might have even been better and more efficient. Oh well, fix it, and then resubmit it. You have unlimited submissions in my class, so make sure to double check that, fix it, resubmit it, and then move on. So without further ado, let's take a look at our MyLab structure. So you should be about probably here right now in the midst of chapter 2. But our Excel project set 1 is here. It should be set without a prerequisite. You can do it at any point. So let's go ahead and dive into it. I've already made some submissions, and so it's like, oh, do you want to review or do you want to improve score? First, let me show you about this review. So, if you're like, oh, I submitted it, but I only like barely did it. I only have this little bitty points out of 1. What did I do wrong? Well, click on the assignment. It's gonna remind you, hey, you're not actually working it, you're reviewing it. Is that what you want? Yep, that's what I want. And I'm going to show you 2 ways to review. The first is to scroll way down, and there's other checks right here. And what I want you to do is, I don't know why it's this button, but there's a little X/check. If you click in that space, it pops up a screen that will explicitly say, this is what you got right. You got that one right. I gave you 7 out of 7 points in this out of a total of 100 points. And here are the things you did wrong. Notice it literally says, well, in cell C7 on the question tab, I was expecting the formula to be this. MyLab tells you precisely what it's wanting. So if you kind of best case scenario, you do it right. You don't have to ever see a screen like this. Maybe you almost get it right, and MyLab kind of gets mad about it. Like something that's kind of annoying is it's wanting these dollar signs, these absolute references, in front of not just the numbers, but both the number and the letter. So not just locking down the rows, but locking down the row and the column. When arguably, really, we just need to lock down the rows. And I'll talk about that in a second if you don't understand absolute references. But MyLab is wanting them both to be locked down, so it might be counting off if you don't include those B's. And I think, in fact, it did count off when I've tested this in the past. So, you know, it's a bit annoying. You can kind of shake your fist in anger at the screen and say, MyLab, mine was fine. And in fact, is even better. But, just fix it and then resubmit it. Worst case scenario, you have no idea what you're doing. Look what you can do. You could basically copy and paste it in, or kind of retype it in. If you're submitting to that point and just typing it in, and as you do it, you still don't understand what's happening, ask a classmate, ask me, hit me up on Discord, hit me up on email. Make sure that you know what's going on. One big thing I'll show you this when we get in Excel. There's help files in Excel, or just Google this function to see what it does so you can better understand it, so you don't have to be kind of stuck and trapped, but just like copying and pasting it. All right, so there's that. The other way, and it's even better way, is at the top of this review screen, there's a download button. Click that download button, and it will download and open up this. This is the file that I've been using. Let me switch my settings. So I was working, and I only answered this first question. I got it right. Yay me. I'll go over it in a second. But then notice here, if I just hover my mouse over these red flags. Oh, sorry. First, when you download, it downloads and pops up here. It says, hey, these are the things that were wrong. This is kind of a little bit of information overload, but you can look there. Notice it does not highlight what's correct, which is helpful for what I showed you a second ago if you're like not sure what was right. So here it's talking about different types of deductions. It gives you the instructions, the data, and then here's the questions. So if you hover over these cells, the little red flag means that there's a comment on it, and it's adding in a comment saying that there's an error, and it's saying exactly what it's wanting to see there. So all of these, it's telling you what it was wanting to see, and so you just can fix it. For the graphs, you're just gonna have to make sure that they are correct, and it will often describe the graph errors over here. It was saying things were not set correctly over here. That's what this is saying, the bar chart. So this is where they describe those errors. So uh, let's get started. So how would you do this if we were to get started? Well, again, I'm going to go back onto MyLab, um, go over to our assignments, scroll down to Excel Project 1. Oh, by the way, you could also go to Gradebook. On my dummy teacher account, I've actually only attempted as a student this one thing, so I could also go review, and it pops up that same review screen. So let's do it for real. So I'm going to go to Excel Project Set 1. Again, you can do this at any time. I would do it right now while Chapter 2 is fresh in your brain. So you have the option if you have something submitted, review and practice or improve. We select improve. So that way when we click on, we're doing the qualitative assignment. Now we get a different screen. Instead of the here's what you were graded as, here's where you can download. So you can download the materials. You have two things that can download: the instructions and the Excel document. Um, I just download the Excel document. This is just maybe you want to have it printed or on a different monitor, formatted a little bit nicer. You can do that with the Word document. I've had some students who have said that the instructions between the Word and the Excel don't quite agree. Um, if they don't agree, do what's on Excel. If you notice that they don't agree, and you can tell me which ones, what specifically where they don't agree, I can maybe let the authors know, and MyLab and Pearson can maybe fix it. So if you hit download, it'll download, which I already have it downloaded, and then eventually once we get it finished, we'll upload it, and then we'll submit for grading. So when we open it up, it should be this. Notice this one has the LC. I don't know what that stands for, but that's the one that's been graded. The one that we should be using starts with the says there we go. You can see the top. Uh, it has a underscore start. I go ahead and do a file save as, and I change my things from start to end, just so that way I know I'd like to kind of keep a clean copy of what was downloaded. I know I could download it again, but it's just nice to be able to know what I started with in case I mess up or some cat runs across your keyboard and Control Alt deletes and saves and closes the program at the same time. They have a knack for that. So let's get going. So again, the very first tab is a set of instructions. Sometimes you don't need the instructions. Sometimes they're just going to be provided here. This particular one has a nice hint in step 3. All the rest the directions instructions are kind of copied over here on questions, but there is that hint. There are some others that the instructions in the instructions tab are a lot more detailed, so do make sure to take a look at those instructions. Ooh, few things real fast. Make sure you are opening this in Excel. Don't open this in Numbers. That's the Macintosh Apple product. This needs to be in Excel. Do not open this in Sheets. That's the Google products. This is a specifically Excel assignment. Yes, Google Sheets and the Apple Numbers all has the same or very similar functionality. They all use the same functions, but the directions and things and some of the expectations of this might be a little bit off on some assignments. So make sure that you're doing this as an Excel. Also, you have to submit it as an Excel file. If you try to submit it as numbers, it will be angry. You could probably do most things maybe in Sheets and Numbers, but if you do, make sure to save it as an Excel file. There's a second thing that there's some things that only are available on the downloaded version of Excel. So there's like something called pivot charts. In a later assignment, you'll be having to do with pivot charts or pivot tables. That's one of the recommended versions. One of the options that you're wanting is not on the online version. You'll need to download. There's also ones later that you're going to need this data analysis tool pack turned on. I'll show you that in the next video that I'm going to make about qualitative. So you're going to need that to be turned on. And that only is available in the downloaded version of Excel. If you have a Chromebook, find a friend who has a real computer that you can download Office to, or go to the MyLab, go to the library, and be able to complete it there. You have access to Office for free as a student. So as a Temple College student, you can download it for free. But again, if it's a Chromebook, you're going to need to find another place, find another device to be able to do some of these. Some of them, like this one, could be done online on the online version. Some others, future ones, you will be needing the downloaded version. So let's look at the question. It says the present study shows data for a social media platform. For the social media platform preferred by a sample of 90 people between the ages of 18 and 45. This is a little bit dated. You'll notice it's lists like Google Plus and doesn't have newer ones like TikTok on it. We'll describe the data using a frequency distribution, relative frequency distribution, and cumulative frequency distribution. We use the Excel functions to sum up the data. We use the cell referencing to identify relative frequencies. We'll use Excel charts to construct column, bar, and pie charts. We'll change the pie chart style and edit its properties. This is a big set of instructions. Use a cell reference or a single formula where appropriate in order to receive full credit. Do not copy and paste values or type values unless otherwise directed, as you will not receive full credit for your answers. Do not just type in numbers. Excel is a thing where we're doing everything together, everything in Excel. So you don't want to just type things in. Everything is a formula unless it says, hey, it's okay to type this in. Because there's never a need to go off onto scratch paper or to a separate calculator and then type things in. So, what type of data in the cells column B on the data sheet? What's the type of data? Well, it's a whole bunch of words, so that is categorical, or the fancy word that this uses is qualitative. Our book does use categorical. This particular thing is made not just for our book, but for several other things, several other Pearson products. So that's why I use the word qualitative instead of categorical. And then it has these other words that I skip over that actually our book doesn't cover. I'll tell you that it's nominal, because ordinal would imply that there's an order, and there's not an order to this. Google Plus, YouTube, Snapchat, Twitter, what order would you put them in? The order doesn't make any sense. So there's no need to put them in an order. But if we have a category where it was like, what's your personal preference for this thing? Is it low, medium, or high? And we had a whole bunch of low, mediums, and highs. Well, there's an order to low, medium, and high. So that would then be ordinal. Nominal, this doesn't have any order. Which, because there's no order, doing relative frequency and cumulative frequency stuff, sorry, not cumulative, doing cumulative relative frequency is going to be stupid. It is just an exercise in making sure we understand the process, but the cumulative is nonsensical in this type of stuff because the order that they're in is super arbitrary. So that's that little high horse. Okay, so next it says, so that's all that I needed to do was to select that drop down. All right, in cells number 3, in cells C7 to C14, that's this space right here. Find the frequency of the number of people per social media platform. Let me make this just a bit bigger. I think that's helpful. Yeah. All right. Well, If I go to over here to our data, actually, sorry, I'm going to go over to instructions. And we see that it has a hint here. It says hint, use the countif function. All right. If you don't know how to do uh, functions at all, let me give you a quick little primer. Um, so in Excel, if you start with an equal sign, that's telling Excel, hey, anything after this is going to be a function. Do math with it. Or use one of my specific kind of function formula words. So if I said equal to 5 plus 2, instead of it leaving as 5 plus 2, it's going to say that this is 7. I'm going to do a little bit of Excel magic just to show you what it's having beside it. Uh, if I have, uh, if I wanted to find the sum of something, I could just start typing in a formula. So like I want the sum, so I would start typing in sum, and notice I get several different options. So here's just sum, and I could say, oh, I want the sum of 5 and 2, so 5 comma 2, and it's going to give me the sum of those two numbers. You can also reference cells. So I want whatever is in this cell to be this Snapchat cell. So I typed in equal to, and now I'm going to use my mouse, and I'm going to click. So it's saying I want this cell to equal B9. So now it's just basically going to duplicate whatever's over there and stick it right here. That's helpful for just being able to reference things or be able to use numbers, especially if it's numbers. That's really, really handy. One more thing, if I want to distinguish an interval, I don't know what it's going to do here. It might get yeah, it's angry at me. Um, got it. Uh, so if I had a bunch of if I had a bunch of numbers, as we'll see, if I click and drag, notice how in order to say from here to there, it's using a colon. So that colon is using for that interval. So that's that kind of quick little a summary of a few things for Excel. So let's get going on this question. So it wants us to use the countif function. So I'm going to hit equal to, and then start typing the words count if. Notice count has several options, and uh, I could go ahead and type count if. I'm just going to leave it at count. And you can see that count says count the number of cells in a range that contains numbers. Well, I'm not wanting just to count how many numbers I have. I'm wanting to count how many things I have that say Google Plus. So count A counts the number of cells in a range that are not empty. All right, so it's like, hey, look in this range. How many have something? How many are not empty? This is the opposite. It counts the number of empty cells. It's like kind of count A, count if there's anything. Count how many blanks there are. We're going to do count if. Counts the number of cells within a given range that meets a given condition. And there's a subtle difference between count ifs. It's a set of conditions or criteria. We're just wanting one little condition. So I could keep typing if and then put an open parenthesis, but a shortcut that will make your life easier is if you've arrived at, I'm just hitting the up and down arrows on my keyboard. If you arrived at the one that you want, just press tab. Not enter. Enter will just take whatever you have written. But if you press tab, it will use that function and then even open with the parenthesis. If I didn't have this, I would need to finish typing if and then open parenthesis. All right. So now it's wanting two things. I'm going to get back to that count if tab because I think it tells me helpful things. I guess it doesn't. So here it says count if and it wants the range, comma, the criteria. If you're really stuck and having trouble, just click on this count if and it should pop up some help over here. And it even has a video explaining the countif function and it has some examples. So if you're really unsure, if you arrived at the function you think you're supposed to use, I just clicked on it on that little drop-down helper, and then that help popped up. But so I want the range. So I need to tell this function to come over to the data table and look at all 90 of those values. So I'm going to come over to the data. Notice what I've done, it might be a little bit small, but it added data, data exclamation point. So it's saying, hey, look over at this tab, this worksheet, and it's named data, and so it's using the exclamation point. So that's why these have to be uniquely named. And now I'm going to click and drag. I'm going to click and drag from B2 all the way down to B90. Ooh, a little bit more. There we go. Actually, sorry, B91. Now, there's a few ways I could have done this. I clicked and dragged just then. If you knew it was B2 to B91, you could just type it in. And look, I'll show you that it will do that. So B2 colon B91, and notice when I pop up the 91, it should... Oh, angry at me. It's angry at me. Well, I could type it in. I thought it would start highlighting. You get it back. Okay, data. So the other way, so we could click and drag. We could type it in. One other way is you could click on the first one. I'm going to scroll down, scroll down, scroll down until I'm at the bottom one. I'm going to use my finger. I'm going to press and hold the shift, one of the shift keys, and then click on the bottom one. So sometimes that's easy, especially if it's a really long list. Click on the first one, scroll down to the bottom, press and hold shift with one finger, and then click with the other to get that interval. So now I want my data from B2 to B91. Now I'm going to press comma. Notice it's moving from my range to my criteria. Now I'm going to go back to the questions tab. It added questions, and I don't want it there, and I think Pearson doesn't want it either. So I'm going to delete the questions tab because I'm back on the main tab. The reason why it's there is because it is because I clicked on the tab, so it's trying to type that in. Notice if I did not press the comma and then you press questions, it would have just deleted that. I'll show you what that looks like in a second and how to avoid that. All right, so now I need I need to reference the Google Plus thing, which annoyingly this is covering it up. So remember in Excel, we reference cells by its column and then its row. So cell B7 is the thing I'm looking for. Ideally, I would click on it, but this is in the way. So I'm just going to use my keyboard and type B7. And you can see a little bit that there is a blue box now around B7. And close my parentheses and press equal, or press enter. So this is not perfectly done. I've intentionally made a mistake, air quote mistake, but I do want to just show you what it's done. So it's telling me the number 5. So what it's saying is it's saying, hey, I just counted 5 Google Pluses. So if you scroll through these 90 some odd people, I see 1 Google Plus, I see another one, 2, 3, 4, 5, and no more. Yep. Now you might not have 5 because this data is different for everybody. But mine was able to count 5. Let me just do a quick double check to show you that this was, oh, actually it did want that questions there. Okay, well I can put that back. But it was one of those dollar signs. So let me show you what that's about. And it might take it without this, but let me put that questions back. So I want questions B7. There we go. I was lazy. Just to be clear what I did, I switched to the data tab. Oops, I was in here under criteria, switch to data. Notice, oh, I'm not in it. I want to be in here. There we go. Switch to the data tab. Well, maybe it's happy with it, so that's why it's not doing it. It wasn't there, comma, data. I click back and then it had that questions, which makes sense that it would be there. So they weren't penalizing if you had it. I think you could probably get away with it not being there. All right. So now that we know that it's doing that, I'm about to show you about fill down, but it's going to break. So I know what I'm about to do is going to break. Oh, actually, sorry. I know I'm a little bit ADD and jumping around. Let me show you another common error that students do. You might have been having a bit of frustration a second ago. So if I did the same thing, count if, and I want to do my range, so I come over here and I highlight my range. If I don't press the comma, and I'm like, all right, I did that. It's there. Count if data, B2 to B92, B91. And now we click on questions. Notice it just changed it from data to questions. And because the way that some things are merged, it's an actually going questions A2 to I91. And you're like, that's not what I'm selecting. Well, because when you're switching back to questions, it's kind of moving that selection over here, and that's why it's kind of messing up like that. So I'm about to press the escape key, which is like, get me out of here. So the escape key works. It's like, get me out of here. So it just like subtracted, got rid of all those things I was just typing in. So make sure to press the comma before moving on to the next section. Alrighty. So I'm going to use this fill button. Let me explain the fill for just a second. So what's nice about the fill, let's say I have 2, 4, 6, 8, and I want to then be able to continue this pattern. I could just drag this down, and notice it's going to, it recognizes that pattern and it fills down. That's kind of nice. Um, if I just had, let me put that back there. And then if I had equal to this number, this cell plus 5. So I'm going to take another 2 plus 5. So I want to add 5 to this. But then now I want to add 5 to that 4, and add 5 to the 6th, and add 5 to the 8. Well, I could drag this down as well. And what it's going to do is it's going to, you can look in the top corner here. Actually, I'll click here. So notice it's taking now, it's this E7 plus 5. Now it's this E8 plus 5. So it's filling that down, and it's filling and it's adjusting that row. Notice that that 9, that row is changing, but the column's not. That's because I'm filling down. If I filled across this way, it's going to get angry and not be right. But now notice it's adjusting the row. So now it's F6 plus 5. Now G6 plus 5. Now, sorry, it's really wide right there. G6 plus 5. Now this is H6 plus 5. So it's adding, it's now adjusting that column over. So that's how we fill. So I like to do it personally by just clicking on this little square right here. There's a few other ways you could do it. You can click and highlight, and then home, fill, down. So under the home tab, come over to fill, select down, and you can also fill down. If you like keyboard functions, I believe it's Control or Command D, and that will fill down. I don't know if fill down behaves well with patterns. Yeah, it doesn't, at least the way that I'm highlighting it, it doesn't fill down as we want it to. So if I'm wanting these patterns, then you really need to say, hey, here's this pattern, recognize that, now keep going. All right. Oops, I almost deleted too much. So that's that about filling. So this is about to be wrong. If I fill down from here, it looks fine, but let's look and see what this Instagram says. This Instagram is counting the number of Instagrams from B9 to B98 over here in data. So B9 to B98, so from here down, so it's not counting any of these up here. Well, thankfully none of those are Instagram, but let's take a look at, yeah. Let's look at, oh, well that might, but it might be, could be, sometimes it could be a potential problem, because what if one of these up here was Instagram? So that's a bummer. Um, so what we need to do is, this is wrong because I don't need that to change. Actually, let me put that back so you can see real fast. Notice how this is going from B3 to B92, B4 to B93, B5 to B94. It's just one more each time. So we need to lock in. It's like freeze it, like Mr. Freeze. You just want to freeze, put in ice. These this 2 and this 91. Specifically, I really just need to freeze the 2 and the 91, but the key, I think, wants all of them frozen. So let's go through that. First, depending upon what kind of computer you're on, I'm on a desktop, so my function keys aren't really function. I mean, there are real function keys. I don't have to worry too much about. I can actually press F4 is what I'm about to press F4. If your F4 is like changing a monitor around or a mute or something like that, you might need to press the FN button if you have that on your keyboard. So, but if I press F4, which you'll be looking right here, it's going to add some dollar signs. So I can toggle through putting a dollar sign on both, on just the number, that's the row, on just the letter, that's the column, or they're all off. So these are what's called absolute references. If the dollar sign is there, that's like putting that thing in ice. So that way when you fill down or fill across, it's not changing. If you fill down, you're changing rows, then you would want the row to be frozen. And you could get by with just the two having the dollar sign. If you fill across and you don't want it to fill across, then you would want the letter to be frozen, the column to be frozen. If you're wanting them to not change ever, then just freeze them both. In theory, we don't want any of them we don't want it to change. We don't have a reason for it to change. I'm wanting it to look specifically there. So that's also logically why you could have them both be there. There's sometimes for efficiency, you do want to kind of to have to like replicate something, but freeze just the row, just the column. So that's where they have those other options. So if you don't want to use the F4 button, just press Shift 4 and just slap those dollar signs in front of both the letter and the number. So now when I fill down, fill down, notice that we have dollar signs in front of the B's. Anything where there's a dollar sign, it doesn't change at all. Notice I'm pressing Escape every time I click out of this and double clicking into the next thing just to demonstrate with you. If I didn't click Escape, sometimes I might start inadvertently clicking in boxes and be changing the formula. So that's always a good idea. So that's kind of a big hurdle that a lot of students don't understand is the absolute references and then this countif function. So that's kind of really one of the main reasons why I wanted to do this video is to show off that and then show off how you can check your answers. But let's kind of quickly move to the others. So the rest should be a little bit faster. No, I'm already about 30 minutes in. Okay, so next, find the sum. So the sum is what I just demoed a second ago. If you're not sure, just start well, I think I'm wanting to make a sum. I don't know the functions. Let me just try typing sum. Oh, sum is one of my options. Let's go with that. So I want the sum. I'm going to press tab. It doesn't have to be caps. It'll cap it for you, but it turns into caps and opens the parenthesis for me. And I want to add up these cells from cell C7 down to cell C14. For some reason, the cell C14, my number is disappearing, but I still was able to highlight it. Press my enter button to take it, and so notice it's sum C7 to C14, and it's adding it up and get 90, which is what we should know because we were told that it was 90 people to begin with. So that makes me feel better about that. All right, then now it wants me to construct a relative frequency distribution and then eventually a cumulative relative frequency distribution. So relative frequency, so remember if I said, OMG, I just walked into a room and there were 20 people using Facebook. Can you believe it? You might be like, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about that. Because if I walked into a room full of people and 20 people are using 20 people are their preferred social media was Facebook. And the room, and you might have asked, well, how many people are in the room? Oh, there's 20 people in the room. Everybody in the room preferred Facebook. Can you believe it? Then you go, oh wow, that's a big deal. Or if I said, oh yeah, there were 2 million people in the room and only 20 people preferred Facebook. Oh, that's really tiny. So do you see how it's really relative to how many people in the room, whether 20 is a astonishing number or not. So relative to this 90, how big is this 20? So that's what we're going to do is we're going to basically produce a proportion of these. We're going to leave it as a proportion. We could turn it into percent, but it doesn't tell us to, so we're going to leave it as a proportion. So if I was like, well, what proportion of these 90 people like Google Plus, which no longer really exists, it would be, you would do 5 out of 90, right? Well, I don't want to just do 5 out of 90 and get this number. So I did 5 over 90 and it just like auto did this number for me. Well, that's cool that it did that, but that's not what I want to do. I want to use these numbers up here. So I'm going to press equal to, and again, 5 over 90 would not be right because I want to use these numbers here. I should never have to type anything. I want to use this 5 and then divided by this 90. Now, you might be saying, Mr. Leach, that's not 5 and 90. That's C7 and C15. And you're right, it is. But what it's going to do is it's looking at this 5 and it's looking at this 90. and then it will calculate that same 5 over 90. It is already built to round to 2 decimal places. Just the worksheet came that way. The designers of it made it that way. If you ever want to just, we don't, for this assignment, do not change this, do not change this, let it be happy how it is. If you wanted to see a little bit behind the scenes, it's something I use often enough. It's Control 1 or right click Format Cells, but Control 1 pops it up. And notice it's set to be a number and it's set to round to 2 decimal places. That's why it went ahead and is rounding to those 2 decimal places, because 5 out of 90 is not simply 6%. All right. Now, again, something's about to break. So I could do this next one. I could do equal to this 8 over 90, and then this over 90, and then this over 90, and then this over 90. But that sure seems annoying, because especially what if it was a whole lot more than just these, 7 things, 8 things? So sure would be great if we could fill down. Well, let's fill down. Let's see what happens. Oh yeah, it doesn't behave right. Why is it not behaving this way? Well, what's it doing here? Oh, it's dividing 8 divided by empty. So it's dividing by 0 because it's dividing by basically, it's reading this empty cell as 0. Okay. And then this is saying value because it's dividing 18 over a word and you're mixing things, and so that's also a problem. So yeah, I need to divide it by 90 every single time. So what should we do? If you're telling me absolute references or the dollar signs, that is correct. So if you just press F4 or Fn F4, and it'll auto slap the dollar signs on either of those. Oh, do note that my cursor, I'm double clicking to be able to edit, or you could click, move your mouse up to the top, but that's small. I like just to double click. Make sure your cursor is somewhere. It could be before the C, between the C and the 15, between the 1 and the 5, after the 5, somewhere touching that cell reference, and then you hit F4. It'll take care of it. So now I have C7 over my dollar sign C, dollar sign C, dollar sign 15. So now when I fill down, it behaves itself. Notice it's doing C8 over this 90. So that 8 over the 90. This is this 20 over this 90. It is locking and freezing that 90 in place. That's that absolute reference. All right, now let's do a cumulative relative frequency. These relative frequencies make sense. This is here just for practice purposes, because really a cumulative relative frequency is stupid with this data because it's nominal. It's not ordinal. There's no order to this. If this was a like even a 8-point Likert scale where there's some sort of natural order to this, I really disagree, somewhat disagree, mildly disagree, shrug, disagree, a little bit agree, like so forth. Then sure, you could have that kind of cumulative relative frequency. But we're practicing. So what we need to do is that if this was a cumulative relative frequency, which remember the cumulative is we look wherever you look at that thing and below, or like kind of less than, if there's this order to it. So what's going to happen is this first one, we just need to move over this 6%. So what I did is I just said equal to, and then click on this 0.06 to kind of, in a way, copy and paste it over, but it's just referencing this cell. Because if I look here and up, it's just that 6. Well, now I want to add this 9% and 6%. So I could add these two, but the way that we really do this quickly, is by saying equal to this previous one plus this next one. So look at what's highlighted here. So it's this previous one above plus this next one in this next column. You might be asking yourself, why are you doing that? Well, because otherwise I would have to add these two. And then this next row, I'd have to add these 3. This next row, add these 4. This next one, add these 5. And then this 6, and this 7, and the 8. And that's just tedious. But look what I can do now. If I filled, I'm going to fill all the way down in a second, but right now I'm just going to fill down 1. And did it behave how we want it to? It's going to now add this cell plus the next one we want. And this 14 are these two already added up. So this one is going to be these two added up. So if I if I fill out this cumulative relative frequency, which is the way that you would do this by hand, right? If I was doing this by hand, I would do this plus this, put it here. And it would be like, well, I've already added that up. So this plus this, put it here. This plus this, put it here. This plus this, put it here. This plus this, this plus this, this plus this, so forth. And we should get 1, because at that point, that's 90 over 90. All right, so now it says, highlight the frequency distribution table in cells B6 to C14. Select Insert tab, Insert column of bar chart, the first 2D column, move the chart and resize it to fit here. Change the title to Social Media Platforms Column Chart. So follow these directions explicitly. It's also just checking same words over here. So B6 to C14, B6 to C14. So it wants that word frequency, which probably might not be the best thing, but it wants that word, it wants it highlighted. Then I'm going to go to Insert up here. Then Insert column or bar chart. So here's the column or bar chart right here. And select the first 2D column. The bar, they're calling the bars the horizontal bars. I want the column bars. Oh, bleh, pause. I said follow the directions explicitly. B6 to C14. What did I highlight? I highlighted C6 to C14. No, that's wrong. And I knew that that's wrong because look at the x-axis. It just says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's not right. So I need to highlight B6 to C14. And now we're doing this, and there we go. So there do you see how it's looking, how it's showing Google+, YouTube, Snapchat, Twitter, WhatsApp, so forth. So I'm going to select that. Move this down. In my experience, be a little bit obnoxious about trying to place this where it goes. If you put it beyond the space, it might not find it. And so it's one of the common errors. It says it couldn't find the chart. The chart wasn't placed where it's supposed to be. And you had it like, you had it just like barely a little bit too big like this, or something like that. So make sure that it like is small. It's err on the side of it being smaller, I think. Seeing a little bit of blue than having it be too big. All right. So move it to fit there and change the title to Social Media Platforms Column Chart. Dunzo. Now, highlight the frequency distribution, B6 to C14. Click the Insert tab. Is this the same thing? B6 to C14? Oh, they're wanting it to be a bar chart. The bar chart is what they're saying is the horizontal one. So I'm just clicking, make sure you click on like the white space of the graph. And this is a social media platforms bar chart. All right. Based on the sample data, determine the most popular platform. Choose your answer from the drop-down. Most popular, it's the biggest, Facebook. At least my data is. What's the second most popular? Snapchat. Third most popular, Twitter. Based on the sample data, determine the least popular, Pinterest, based on my data. This is a common error that students will mess up. In this cell, find the relative frequency of the people who prefer Twitter in the sample. A lot of students would go, oh, it's the 17%. And they would come down here and they would type in 0.17. And that's right, but MyLab grades that wrong. You should not have to type in numbers. I want a formula equal to, click. So notice how then it says, oh, that seats just cell C21. That's what it's wanting to see. It's wanting that formula. It is not wanting you just to type in a number. Never just type in a number. All right, highlight the frequency distribution in cells B6 to C14. And now we're going to do a pie chart, but for the relative frequency. B17 to, no, frequency distribution. So still this. Insert and pie chart, 2D pie chart. There is one that you'll do later that is a 3D pie chart. And as you've learned in chapter 2, 3D charts are the devil. Just get mad at it, but don't do anything about it. I mean, follow the directions. I tried submitting it un-3D'd and it got mad at me. So I know you want the grade, so submit it as the directions. Okay, the first 2D pie icon, move the pie chart within range, change the title to be Social Media Platforms Pie Chart, and then new directions, there's to change the design to style 3. Under design, pick style 3. That's what it's named, is style 3. Click. And it did that for us. So now let's practice copying and pasting. So again, make sure that you have the background of the chart selected. Copy it. I'm going to come down here and hit paste. I just clicked in the cell. It's all merged and it pasted it where I wanted it to. How about that? That's nice. So double click the biggest slice for the most popular platform. That says 22%. So I'm going to click this one. You might have to click it a few times so that way just that's highlighted. And then from the format data point window, so I'm going to see, I might have to come up here to, up here to format. And then somewhere, oh yeah, sorry, no, I just right click on it and say format data point. So let me go through the steps again. So pretend this is closed. I'm clicking again. Notice it was not double clicking, but it was like clicking so that way I just see circles right here just on that green. Right click, format data point. And then now I have this selection over here. There's these options for just that, and change the point explosion to be 10%. So I'm just going to click up a few times to 10%, and notice as it did, that's kind of moving that out. It's like, oh, look at this. So that's a nice way to kind of focus. Let's say you're making a PowerPoint presentation for somebody to kind of say, let me draw your attention to this pie piece. So you could talk about that. So that's what that's about. Okay. Well, that's that. So then, hopefully along the way, you've been saving it. So Control S is a nice handy way to do that. Or there might be up here to manually save it. And then all you have to do, I'm not going to do it for you, but you come over here to choose file, pick your file, make sure it's saved in a spot. Like, don't just have these in your download folder. Make a business stat folder, Excel projects, and just put them in there. Keep your life organized. Upload it, choose your file, tell it to upload, and then submit for grading. And sometimes it gets a little angry about it. But whenever you're done with it, then go to the gradebook section, click on review, and then you can see what you did there. And again, for some reason, if you didn't 100% it, didn't get a 1 out of 1, click on it, see what it didn't like, and fix it. Because just remember what I showed you earlier. Every piece of this, it tells you, especially for the formulas, it tells you what it's looking for. So for at least, especially for the formulas, you should be able to get that all right. All right. All right. I hope this helped you understand this, helped to give you a little kickstart. I did take a little bit of time. I know this was, pushing 50 minutes, almost 50 minutes now. I wanted to make sure that if you did not understand Excel, you knew enough a little bit to be dangerous about functions and formulas, and filling and absolute references, and all those things. So hopefully that helps you survive this first one. Check out my video when you get to chapter 3. I'll be covering the one for that. I'm actually about to stop this and record that one. So make sure to check that one out. Don't fall behind. Let me know if you need any help. Take care, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye.